Digital Audio Health by Symatrax.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you believe that there is more to life than what you see right now, and you want to find out more, listen in as her guests share their journey and their extraordinary experiences. Now, here is your host, Rhonda Grant.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show. Sometimes the universe has a way of placing people or obstacles in your path to help guide and direct you on your mission. Listen in as we discover the path my guest has traveled. Has she been inspired by a calling, crafted her journey, or a bit of both? I invite you to embrace the conversation and to use it to help you to recognize if this is happening in your life. Our guest today is Jill Lowy, speaker and author of many books. Her most recent books include 10 Ways to Improve Your Karma, Dealing with Spiritual Challenges, and Practicing the Way of the Tao Te Ching. She has given many talks, lectures, and led various workshops and retreats. She promotes raising one's awareness to our true nature and inner divinity to bring peace and harmony into our lives. Welcome to the show, Jill.
Hi, Rhonda. It's so good to be with you.
It's so nice to be with you. And we have a very special friend together, Gail Heisian. She has the podcast Small, Medium, at Large.
Correct.
And yes, and I saw you there. And I was actually a guest on her show as well.
I saw that you were on her show too.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
It's a small world. Let the audience know a little bit about your background and take us there first, and then we'll get on our journey.
Okay. Well, just a little bit about my background. I was born and raised near Chicago, Illinois, in a small suburb there, and pretty much grew up a normal childhood life. I was just lucky, probably lucky than most kids, is that, our family used to go camping a lot.
Yeah.
And I really, really enjoyed being with nature, the amount of camping that we did. Mm-hmm. Luckily, my mother had the kind of job where she had the summers off, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So our whole family would go out camping and being, great time to grow up being in nature in different parks in Wisconsin and Minnesota and the area around there. So pretty much normal life, and things really didn't go haywire for me until I was in my 20s.
Yes.
And I read the book Be Here Now by Ram Dass.
Yes.
And like many people before me, that book just changed my life. When I was reading it, so many bells and whistles went off in my head. I mean, everything that I thought life was about was all changed.
Yes, just turned on its head.
Just turned on a light that it's like I knew all this all along, but it was like buried. And I was just like, more into like the normal person wanting to grow up, hang out, shop, and make money and have a job. And that all changed.
All of a sudden.
That all changed. After that, it's like I had to go and retreat. And not a meditation retreat, I was going to say, but just a retreat by myself, because it totally rewired my brain, my thinking, my thoughts about the world and who I was. And nothing was what I thought it was. Mm-hmm. And it was an awakening. It was an awakening, probably the first awakening. And so that changed my life. It changed my whole disposition. Yeah. All my friends who used to know me thought I went off the deep end.
Oh, yes. Completely.
It was. And so everything changed. And then I began studying meditation. Mm-hmm. And I became involved with Kriya Yoga, a temple of Kriya Yoga in Chicago, which is Yogananda's tradition, and studied with him in yoga. And then I also mastered Waysun Liao, and I studied Tai Chi and Qigong for I've been doing it at least 30 years now, but at first studied with him.
Mm-hmm.
And all this happened at once. I started studying all this stuff at once. And it was completely natural. It was after that awakening, it was completely natural.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really started me into the path at 20s. And then I just studied and became more involved, and then was asked to start teaching Tai Chi, Qigong, and different aspects of Kriya Yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And so became very involved with that. So I guess that's a good intro.
It is a good intro. So when you had this awakening, so some people have little by little by little awakenings, and then they'll have a huge one. It's almost like the universe is calibrating the soul to prepare for the next level. But
Right.
for you, it sounded like it was a real bang awakening.
It was.
And it just, you reevaluated. So once you had that first big awakening from reading Ram Dass's book and starting your training, did you have a hunger to know more and learn more and be more? Is that why you ended up doing the different studies?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to know the true nature of reality. I wanted to know who I really was. I wanted to know the truth of our existence. And I had a longing and yearning to know that intimately. I just didn't want to read it in a book and say, "Oh, this is what the truth is." Now you can go off and eat your cake.
I know, because I mean, in every little level of truth that you read, it helps you until you're saying, no, there's more, and it's kind of like eating a bag of chips, is that the more you learn, the more there is to learn, and the more you want to learn, and then it ends up taking over your life.
It does. It can take over to your life the wrong way too, also, because if you want, some people go on to, what is it called, spiritual bygassing or something like that, where someone becomes really involved studying and practicing spirituality, and they read everything they can, and they've got huge libraries of books, but it's like they haven't fathomed the depth and meaning behind all those books. The truth hasn't been realized in them. They know a lot of intellectual knowledge about different traditions and different things and different occult and practices.
Sure.
But they don't know the essence of it, because that essence will come out, will enlighten you and come out of you. And just reading a lot of books won't do it. And so, like in Taoism, it says the Taoists don't learn by more reading, they learn by less learning, less doing.
And more being.
And more being. Exactly. More being. That's a good point.
Yeah, because, you can spend your life reading all of those books and being intellectually competent when you speak with others who went the way that you did, which is the true essence of who you are, and continuing with practices to resonate in your body and your heart and all of that, right?
Sure.
And so, and it's also, I find, is that when you're really hungry, when you get that first awakening, and especially if it's big, that it's easy to follow the wrong leader, because people like to follow people.
Yes. Right? And that can get you into trouble, because then you start living someone else's truth and not your own. And that can take you on someplace you really don't want to go.
Yes. And so you learned all of these different aspects in order to help your own soul and your own mission. And then you learned with Chinese masters and later became a Kriya Yoga. Did I say that right?
Kriya Yoga?
Oh, Kriya Yoga. Yeah. What is Kriya Yoga? That's what I hadn't heard of that.
Kriya Yoga, it just means that Kriya itself means action, but Kriya Yoga is a method of yoga taught by Parmahansa Yoganada, and not only him, but others in his lineage.
Yes.
that it has passed through time since, I guess it goes all the way back to Babaji or some of the first yogis on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a specific lineage that has specific meditation techniques and
Right.
practices. Yeah.
And do you find that yoga, which is not the way the Eastern see yoga, but rather the Western yoga, right, is what we're talking about, is conditioning your body and your mind and your spirit, is it not?
Correct.
Yes.
Because, you see, at least in the beginning here, as it was taught in the West, it was, you would go to a yoga studio. You go to a studio to go work
Ah,
out, and that was yoga, just doing a bunch of exercise and stretches. And that's, you saw in Hollywood, it was a hip thing
yeah.
to do, and people were
Oh, it's
doing it.
huge. Yeah,
Yeah,
still
yeah,
is huge.
yeah. And so,
Mhm.
but that's only one little aspect of yoga, hatha
Yes,
yoga, which is more doing the asanas and the different postures and
right.
stretches and exercises. Where that's just a small pigeon part of yoga, but for the Westerners, they took it as the whole thing of yoga, and
Yes.
that's really far from the truth on that.
Hmm. Yes, it's very interesting. And I mean, I didn't know that there was there's really two different kinds of yoga, this side and the other side of the world.
Right,
So, and a lot of people don't even know that in the
right.
Eastern.
Right. They
Uh,
don't know the philosophy and the deeper practices, the meditation practices, the mind training practices behind it.
mhm,
And so, because that's all part, and not only that, the practice of mind, the real depth part of yoga that most people hardly any practice is the mindfulness practices of yoga, and that's a daily practice that you do 24/7. It's a whole change of your whole life where you're learning to observe and be in the world and
mhm,
trying and doing it with compassion and
mhm.
also with non-judgment. And that
Non-judgment.
non-judgment practice of mindfulness is being able to go through your life, your events, things that happen to you and other people, with not being so judgmental,
Hmm.
because that's what we're taught in the West, is to be judgmental about everything.
Hmm.
And yoga is just the opposite of that, is to be more non-judgment,
Hmm.
because that's what brings about the deeper peace of mind,
Yes.
is being non-judgmental. It's all that judgment that stirs up all the negative emotions, the anger, the resentment,
Hmm.
all the judgments that we make,
Hmm.
cause all these emotional turmoil.
Yes.
That's really become just a way of life for us and
Yes.
causes so much suffering.
It causes a lot of suffering, and people are afraid to be themselves and follow their own instincts, which would be the instincts of their soul, being afraid of being judged, and they would rather be like everybody else than be judged.
Exactly. That
Be
we're
like,
go.
I was going to say, be miserable and be like everybody else than be happy or reach peacefulness by following their own intuition of
Right.
who they're to be, what they're to be. And
Right.
do you agree with that? Is that a
I
fair
do.
statement? Mm-hmm.
I do, especially because I think we've been highly conditioned in this culture.
Mm-hmm.
We're conditioned since the day we're born in
Yeah.
terms of, what things we should do,
Mm-hmm.
how girls should behave, how boys should behave, how they should dress. When we go to school, we have to learn a certain mode of thinking and a certain mode of the way of living, that we should all get a
Mm-hmm.
job, that we should all raise so many 2.5 children and get a car and a house, and that this
Yeah.
is this is the way life should be. We're
Yeah.
taught that.
Yeah. Because that's happiness, right?
That's happiness.
Yes.
And the more we have, the bigger the burger, the better the burger. It's always the more we have, the happier we will be.
Yeah.
And it's far from the truth.
It's far from the truth. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Peace always comes from within. And it's something that you find. You can chase fame, you can chase glory, you can chase money,
Mm-hmm.
but you won't find it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll always end up with misery at the end,
Mm-hmm.
because it all changes, it all goes away. Life is impermanent and things
Yes.
are always changing.
Yes. And we're busy in our minds.
For sure. We are too busy in our minds.
Yes.
Um,
And so the roommate in our head that's chattering all day long,
correct.
I've got mine stopped. Thank goodness.
All right. Good for you, because
Yeah, it's such a peaceful way to live when you're not constantly hearing it part of everyone's brain. It's just a banter that keeps on repeating. And I think I might be off by a couple of percentages, but the thoughts that you had yesterday, 97% of the thoughts that you had yesterday, there are the exact same thoughts you had today, except for you're hoping for a different outcome. And that might be not very productive if you are wanting to improve your life. But we don't know that until we know that. And that's why I love having people like you on my podcast, that you spent your life at 21 years of age or 20 years of age in that time frame and read a book, and you just changed your life or changed your trajectory
right.
because of it.
Yeah.
Now, do you ever think of, if you didn't go on that path, what your life would be like if you were still that, following with everybody else and I mean, you went to university and studied
True.
psychology and all of those things. So you were very well conditioned in our school system, or the school system, right?
Right.
And so do you ever think, if you did not change your path then, what your life would be like today?
I don't dwell on that very.
I know this is a hard question. I mean, I wouldn't want it either. You don't think
I would. It would be hard for me to imagine that, but I could see where I would be more, maybe towards my whole concern might have been just trying to get a good career and trying to become recognized in the career, and try to make a lot of money and move up the status quo, and because that's what I thought, that's what I would be thinking, that what one should do.
Yeah, and that's what we grow up to. We learn that, right?
We do learn that.
We learn that.
We do.
But we don't learn that other side. I mean, a lot of people go to church and things. That's part of their upbringing. But we're not talking about that type of teaching that you did. You learned a completely different way. And so tell us a little bit about how you felt as you were taking those steps. Did you have any uncertainty as you grew and learned in those traditions?
For sure.
Yes.
Tons.
Good. It's good to know. Yes.
All kinds of. See, when you're on that path, when you get on that spiritual path, most people think it might be like once you're on that path, then things are rosy.
You're just beautiful.
And they're not rosy.
No.
I found you can't really advance on the path until you face all those atrocities and fears and things that have happened to you while you were growing up, or any kind of resentment and anger that you carry inside you. You won't be able to go deep in meditation, and you'll get a little bit, but you won't go deep into until you start to resolve those issues. And what will happen, those issues will come up in meditation. So you'll be having a blissful meditation. All of a sudden, all this anger or all this hatred towards something will arise.
Yeah.
So when you're growing on the path, you have to learn to address those. You have to face those. Yeah. And so that's the hard part. I find that That's the hard part.
Well,
All
who
the
wants to
negative-
do that? Nobody
who wants
wants
to
to do
do it?
that.
I want my happy pill. I take my little spiritual happy pill and I don't have to deal with any of that, but it don't
Yeah.
work that way.
No.
And so
Yes.
I find that was it is and still is. I mean, I don't claim to be any kind of enlightened individual. I'm still on a path and still dealing with of issues and pain, things that I still work with and still deal with. The only plus is I'm aware of them. And
Yes.
once you're aware, most people aren't even aware that these
No.
things are going on in their
No.
minds.
No. That's
And
right.
it might be driving their behavior,
Yes.
causing them to do all kinds. The things that people do in this society to other people is amazing, and a lot of it is they have this tracks of conditioning or atrocities that have happened to them, and they're
Yes.
acting them out in society, and they're not even aware of what that's going on in your head. So the first step in spirituality is to become aware of that, to become aware of those programs, those recordings in your head that could be negative, that could be chips that you have on your shoulder, that grudges that you hold against people,
And grudges you hold against yourself too.
Of course, of course, and those can be much worse.
Yes.
Especially, if you can't forgive yourself, forgiveness is such a huge part of the spiritual path. Yeah. Forgiving yourself and forgiving others, and not holding on to those grudges and hurts that you have gotten in the past from whether you've caused them or whether other people have caused them, but learning to forgive others and learning to forgive yourself. It's lets go of such pain when you can do that.
Yeah.
And it's so important on the spiritual path to be able to do that.
Yes. And contemplation and reflection.
Yes.
Is, I spent a lot of time in contemplation and reflection. And I just wanted to review my life when I was on my spiritual path, and I still am on it. And the thing is, I didn't realize what I was doing at the time because I didn't have a teacher. I was doing things instinctively because I knew that I needed to do it, but I didn't know why I needed to do it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And
you were kind of guided by your intuition.
I was guided. And when I had a near-death experience, I was T-boned almost a decade ago, and it changed my life completely. And it's when I started writing. I wrote a book, and I started a podcast and all those things. But in the meantime, while I was writing my book and doing all that, I was undergoing a spiritual enlightenment about myself.
Right.
And I went back through my past and took little things and then took big things. And it's tough, especially when you're doing it on your own and you don't have, and a lot of people may be doing the same thing and they don't realize a lot of grief and a lot of time alone. But the beauty on the other side is you're so free. It's almost like you're carrying around this weight like a backpack, if you had a really heavy backpack. And as the days go by, you're taking things out of your backpack and taking a look at them, dealing with them,
right,
and then setting them down, right?
Yes.
And so you keep on getting lighter and lighter and lighter. And then there's room for growth. Then there's room for the soul to start its bigger teaching, right?
Right, exactly. It's like the old story about the tea master. This guy comes, I'm sure you might have heard it.
Maybe not, probably not.
Okay. This old Zen master is a student wants to learn about Zen and is visiting a Zen master. And the student is telling everything about Zen that he knows and all these concepts that he's learned from reading this book about Zen. And the Zen master starts pouring some tea into the student's cup. And the student is going on and on about all these things he knows and stuff. And the teacher keeps pouring the tea. And all of a sudden the teacup starts to overflow.
Yeah.
And all over the table.
All over the place.
All over the place. And the student goes, teacher, the tea is overflowing. And the Zen master goes, just like your mind is overflowing all about things about Zen, needs to be emptied of those things before you can learn anything about it. So it goes along with what you were saying.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have heard that. I wasn't quite sure, but yes, I did. And it's, and everybody is at their own level of awakening, but there just seems to be a whole shift in human consciousness. I think that more and more people, as they awaken a little bit, and it's the age of Aquarius right now,
It
right?
is.
Yeah.
Because I'm an astrologer also, so that's close to the heart for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you discuss a little bit about that? Like, what does that mean? Because the audience may be as hungry as you and I are right now, even speaking with each other
The
about
Aquarian
what
age?
the age of Aquarius, the Aquarian age, and what that means or could means or what we've entered into, right?
Right. Aquarian is one of the hallmarks of that is the opening of occult information
Yes.
to the general public that hasn't in the past hasn't been revealed only to a few. It's making it more available to the common person. So that's happening. And I think you're right. There is a shift that's happening that's aware of. I mean, I was at a Eckhart Tolle gathering. He came to Denver and I went to watch him. And he had filled up a huge auditorium with people. And I was thinking to myself, this would not happen a few years back where people would come and fill up an auditorium to hear somebody talk about esoteric teachings.
Yes.
And so it did my heart good to see that many people were that much aware that they would go and listen to Eckhart Tolle talk about the present moment. And because most people are not in the present moment or don't even know what the present moment is.
And they haven't experienced it.
Right. Not even aware. Most people, their minds are either going towards the future, doing plannings and thinking ahead about the future and living with expectations for a certain result of what they're doing. And their minds are always there. Or it's stuck in the past, always regretting what has been done or just replaying the conditioning that they've been taught, the things that their father, their mother, or someone's taught them, and playing that over their head. And they're never in the present moment. What's happening right now? What's happening at this very moment, right at this present moment, which I think is one of the most extraordinary discoveries that there is.
It is.
It's a normal thing, but most people aren't aware of the present moment. This present moment right now. One little story I'd like to share because one of the questions you asked about was about extraordinary discoveries.
Yes.
And one of the experiences I had that led me through a lot of the teaching is to have out-of-body experiences. It was just something I wanted to experience that. And so I went to a class, and this was way back before it was popular because this was in my 20s. And so it was at a small...
It was spooky.
It was spooky. I went to a small occult bookstore and I took a course on astral projection.
Yeah.
And so I learned the course, I learned the techniques of the course. And then after a year's practice, and it took me that long to do it, well, more like about 6 to 9 months before I had my first intentional experience. A lot of people have had experiences, but it's been incidental.
Yes.
But this was intentional. It was a meditation practice I did, and then I had the experience. And I went out of my body. And I saw my body laying down in bed. And, I did the whole thing that people talk about, flying into outer space and visiting friends. And I did some experiments at home that I had planned to do in terms of feeling different objects and putting them different places to see if they move when I come back into my body. But really interesting things that were neat to do. And so the first time I had that experience, I went and I talked to him. I was so excited. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't fathom that was really possible. And so I went over to my instructor who had taught me, and I said, I can't believe this really happened. And I'm going on about how wonderful and great this is. And he says, that's fine. But this moment right here, right now,
Yeah.
is just as wonderful and as great as that experience that you just had.
Yes.
And that just floored me.
Yeah.
It just floored, and it's so true. It's this
Right.
moment. We don't know what it is. It's incredible when you
Mhm.
start to think about it.
Mhm.
It's just why, how our consciousness exists this way, why it exists in the body in this kind of world, and the things that I mean, it just blows you away.
Yeah.
And so for me, it took an out of body experience to find how the ordinary is just as extraordinary as an extraordinary experience like that is.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well put.
yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah. That was
Um,
pretty cool.
a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people, well, it depends on what you mean by a lot of people. I mean, there's billions of people on the on the earth, right?
Sure,
So I guess I could say a lot of people
the ones we know of.
mistakenly go. I early, well, about 19 or 20, I
Mhm.
mistakenly left my body. Saw my body laying in the bed,
Sure.
freaked right out.
Uh-huh. Of
And the feeling coming back in. Like I
course.
felt the swoosh going up
Of
and then
course.
bang and then coming down really hard.
Right.
So when you have an experience that is fearful and now you're fearful, it's really hard to do that again. You've got to
Right.
overcome that fear.
Correct.
But if I can tell you just a little story,
Sure.
I was
Yeah, sure.
in
It'd
a
be great.
class. I was in a class of NLP
Uh-huh.
with a neurolinguistic
Yes, yes.
program, right?
Right, right.
And so we were taking our first course and we were doing exercises. And a lady that I was with, who was a friend of mine and still
Mhm.
is to this day, and
Mhm.
she was doing this to me, like in order to elicit more information from me,
Sure.
and more information and more information. And I just went up. And the instructor saw what was going on with me, and I'm way up. And I'm sure that I left my body at that time. And she came running across the room, grabbed her hand, and said, "Stop it,"
Wow.
because she saw that I had went.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't drive after. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even carry on a conversation because I had went somewhere else.
Mhm.
And so it's really easy to have these accidental experiences,
Right.
But have you heard of that as somebody taking someone higher or?
No, I haven't heard of someone being able to help propel someone higher like that.
Yes, she's
So that's kind of
she's gifted.
interesting.
I should ask her to do it again
Yeah, there you go.
now that I'm more grounded, right?
Right.
Because I was really young at the time. Maybe at that point I was 30 because I'd had both my kids at that time.
Mhm.
So I would have been 30. But yeah, you can get into situations that you don't understand. And that's exactly what happened to me both times. I didn't understand it. I didn't know who to talk to.
For sure. And I had that unintentional, like you, accidental
Yes.
bike
Yeah.
when I was younger,
Yes.
and when I was camping in Wisconsin. And it
Uh-huh.
happened and I during in the night, it was a stormy night, and
Mm-hmm.
for some reason I had popped out of my body and was outside the tent and walking
Yes.
around. And I didn't know what was happening, what was going on. And I was saying, "Where is everybody?" And all of a sudden I started yelling for my mom, and I didn't know
Yeah.
what was going on. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden I popped back into my body. And then I asked my mom, what just happened? And she's, "Don't worry, it's just a dream."
It's
And
just,
I never thought again about it because I thought it was just a dream.
yeah. Well, and the thing is that's what people know to tell you if you do that type of stuff. Like,
Right, right, right.
they don't know it's anything other than a dream.
Definitely, especially back then. Now people are a little bit more aware, but
Yes.
back then they were not aware. And so,
Yes. And what about sleepwalking? Does that have anything to do with that? That's an altered state as well. And
yeah.
I have done some sleepwalking.
Have you
Oh,
completely out of it?
yeah. I
Wow.
have a very famous story about sleepwalking, but I was a sleepwalker as a child.
Huh.
And I would wake up in my parents' bedroom, them telling me, get back to bed. Like they didn't know I was sleepwalking, and they questioned me the next day, and I didn't know what they were talking about. I just remember them telling me to get back to bed, and I was somewhere that I shouldn't have been because I wasn't in my own room and it was clearly nighttime. But I have a very famous story, and it got back to my home, got back to the city that I lived in before I did. And what it was we were helping our daughter move into dorms, and we had driven up and to the university, to the college, and so it was a very busy time. I was very tired and everything. And my husband had arrived the next day with all of our stuff to go into the dorm. Like, we arrived a day before, and we're very tired. We're shopping. We're getting the dorm stuff all together and I'm very tired. We went to bed that night, and I get up out of bed and I went to the door of the hotel room. I opened the door and I went out. And I started walking. I don't know where I was walking to, but it was towards the elevator. And I heard voices a long piece away. And I thought, what are those voices? And I heard them, and I became more unconscious. And the more conscious I became, the more aware I became if I had nothing on. I started to cover myself. I went back to my room. And I'm pounding on the door, let me in, kind of like Fred Flintstone, Wilma. And he didn't wake up. And I turned around and I'm kicking the door, and it was really hurting my heel. Well, finally he woke up. He opened up the door. I'm still naked. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I just shot underneath his arm and jumped back into bed. And we never even spoke about it at breakfast, nothing. And then when we saw our daughter the next morning, my husband told my daughter about the incident. And by then it was all over the college. It had went back home. And I'm known as the naked lady walking the halls at the Holiday Inn.
I love it.
It's very funny, very revealing.
Yeah.
But I wondered, what type of state would a person like it? That's an altered state as well, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I've never had that experience, but I've had altered experiences where maybe similar in a way. And I remember one time I was practicing Tai Chi, and there was a special seminar.
Yeah.
And I had the experience, my conscious, I experienced I guess even a better one that might be even more appropriate is one time when I was running in the dunes, and after running for a mile or so, all of a sudden my consciousness went above my body.
Yes.
And it wasn't a true out of body, but it was like I was still connected to my body, but I was, and runners will tell you of this experience. Many long distance runners have this experience, so it's verified. It's not something unique and unusual. And so I had that experience of where my conscious was slightly above my body, and I wasn't experiencing any sensations in terms of getting tired. It was like I could run and run, and I had all this without feeling any feelings of tiredness or anything. Wow. So it's really weird bilocation experience.
Yes.
And I think that has some similarities to your experience. And because, I was partially out of the body, but at the same time, my body was running at the same time, but it was a very bilocational experience. That was really, really fascinating.
It's almost like you're witnessing yourself from above.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's what it was.
I've had that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so these are all sort of experiences that you can have that not a lot of people know about them or really know why you have them. It's sort of like dreaming ahead of time. Like Dr. Gary Lockman, he has a book out called Dreaming Ahead of Time, and I interviewed him on my podcast.
Oh,
and
did
it's
you?
The same, yes, and it's the same. He's from Great Britain or lives in Britain right now.
Yeah, I've read some of his books.
Yeah, they're so interesting. I just adore his work. He's such a student of the esoteric, right?
Right.
And I've dreamt things ahead of time. And or had thoughts of the future ahead of time, and it's come true.
So have I.
And
Precognitive dreams.
precognitive dreamings, yeah,
Right.
or precognition, what's
Yes.
about to come, right?
Yes.
I
Right.
would, I would dream about my children's future. I would dream about me,
Mhm.
and it's all very interesting, very curious, and I'm glad that we're at an age now where, and I mean at an age in our evolution that we can talk about these things now, and they're
Yes.
not taboo like they were.
Exactly. So they don't lock you up in a straitjackets.
Well, it's also the Inquisition, that went on for hundreds of years for people
Right. Right.
who
If you had a
think,
precognitive dream back in the Inquisition time, they'd label you as a witch and you get burned at the stake.
yeah, you had to be
Yeah.
very careful.
Yeah.
Somebody knocks at your door, you open it, goes, I knew you were coming.
I knew you were a witch.
I'm reporting you.
Exactly.
How did you know I was coming here?
Yeah, I had to be careful about those things.
Yes, and now we get to talk about these things,
Right.
which is really nice. You're listening to the Rhonda Grant Show right now, whose podcast has been treated with digital audio health by my sponsor, Psychotherapist. And today I have the absolute pleasure to interview Jill, who is going to let us know where we can reach out to how we can reach out to her.
Yeah, so probably the best way to first is if you're interested in, so I've written many books,
Yeah.
and so you can always read some of those in Tai Chi and karma. And I talk a little bit in my latest book in terms of karma, dealing with some of the challenges that you go through on the spiritual path, because there's so many challenges involved. And once you can gain a little awareness about them, then you can meet them in more of a place of openness and peace. And
Yes.
you learn to resolve them. And it's a really important part, and it caused me so much suffering in my own life,
Yes.
And so people can learn from
Yes.
some of my suffering, how to make your life a little bit more easier and how to deal with some things that you might be having problems with on the spiritual path, and might get some guidance from that. And so I don't have a website. You can reach me. You can always email me at jilllowy@yahoo.com. And that's the best way. So right now, or in reading books or from different friends and things like that.
Right. And surrender is a big thing too on the journey of enlightenment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. Surrendering and letting go is
letting go. Yeah.
because surrendering involves a bit of trust. And
Yes.
if you're having a lot of doubt, that's when it's really helpful to learn how to surrendering to your higher self, to your own natural goodness, to your own natural teacher within, or
Yes.
and just knowing that the universe is showing you the way to go to improve yourself and to become more self-realized, more enlightened, more happy, just learning to be more happy. I'm the Dalai Lama said, my religion is just loving kindness. I mean, people could just follow that as a path of spirituality, just practice loving kindness to others and to yourself. There'd be there'd be so much less pain and suffering in this world if people could just do that practice.
Loving kindness.
Loving kindness.
So many people need loving kindness.
Yes.
And being blessed.
Right.
Right. I saw a lady in a store the other day. She was a cashier, and you could just tell on her face she was carrying the world. And I prompted her a little bit, and she told me, and when I left, I said, bless you.
Oh, nice.
Bless you. Yeah. Because sometimes people just need an ear. But when you follow that up with blessing someone, I really feel that that does affect their lives. I really believe that it affects their life. But I'm hoping that just me listening to her and being kind to her helped her that day with her
It
walk.
did, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, you were putting that practice, that loving kindness into practice. And that's what's needed to be done in this world with all the fear and war and hatred and violence. Is to put that practice. You do it one step at a time with people in your own environment.
Yes.
You do it with yourself first.
Do it with yourself. Well, I feel that when you're feeling good inside and you feel that you're on your path and you're walking your journey, you're more able to see people who are not doing so well in their life. And I feel that it's my duty to speak with those people and just to encourage them with their life and even to bless them, I think can help them a lot with their life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's an opportunity that you have to share that, to share these with somebody. And those are the little things that can change and help people so much.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, we get stuck in our own thing. Like you went to the grocery store and you were able to do that. Most people get stuck in a role. I mean, I'm playing the cashier, you're playing the checkout person, and they don't get past that little role playing. So they can't say anything nice to them because they're the cashier and I can't say anything. I can't be a friend to you because you're a cashier and I'm the customer. And so they play these roles and they really don't allow themselves to be right.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate. We're all the same. We're all human beings. We all have souls, and really we're all just souls.
Yes.
And it's your soul. And I find my soul helps me now. Like it used to just put obstacles in my path to help catapult me to enlightenment I could, help other people. And now it's giving me these prompts to look a little deeper into her eyes and see the pain that's sitting there. That could be me unawakened.
Yes.
I'm looking at myself, right? Because it's a reflection of who I could have been.
Right.
And I am so thankful that I have paid attention to my soul and it wouldn't leave me alone, right? Wouldn't leave me alone. Do you feel that you've been called to your journey, crafted it, or a bit of both, Jill?
I think I've been called because I think I've been called there are a lot of different names over the years. But yeah, I definitely have been called at different times, by my higher self, God, divine, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever you want to call it, yeah.
Yes. I mean, I was called to go into the priestess training program at Kriya Yoga when I was first starting the path. I was called to go save my cousin Johnny when he was drowning in Lake Michigan when I was younger. He was drowning. He was being pulled out by a current was pulling him.
Yes, that's right. An undertow. Yeah.
And I just went out there, swam out there and got him. There was no thought in my mind that, I better think maybe about doing this. I could drown myself. No, I was called to go out there and get him. And I went and got him.
Wow.
So I consider that a calling. I just had it. I'm not a hero. I don't claim anything towards that, but I just was called and I just went and did it and got him. And I didn't even think about anything at that. Nothing was in my mind except going to get him. So that was a call.
Yes.
And many people are called that way to situations and to things in life to do that. And when we're called, we've got to go. And so it's good to listen because you're being shown that you should do this. And then I also went to, I don't know if I told you ever, but I went to seminary. I spent five years of my life going to seminary.
What is seminary? I've heard that word, but I don't think that I know that word.
It's what Catholics, Protestants, Christians go to school or different training at different schools. Catholics have their own place where they go, and at Andover Newton Theological School, I went to 5 years of my life. I felt called to the divine to do that.
Wow.
And so I consider that a calling. And
Mm-hmm.
though I never did pursue that, it's
Mm-hmm.
funny, I went through 5 years and Master's of Divinity degree there, and I did co-pastor in a church for a while at a
Mm-hmm.
Unitarian church,
Yes.
and did spiritual counseling and things like that. But I found that the church wasn't a kind of environment or place
Mm-hmm.
that I really wanted to be in.
Yes.
There was so much politics going on,
Oh,
and
yeah. Mm-hmm.
but I was called to go through that, and
Mm-hmm.
I went every day. I had to commute I was living in Vermont at the time, and I had
Oh,
to,
I love Vermont. Yeah.
isn't it gorgeous? Anyway, I had to commute from Vermont to Boston
Yes.
once a week to do that for 5 years. So that was a good part of my life doing that.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was interesting, very interesting going there because you would think, going to a seminary, all the students would have this, would be full of the light and spirit for God or for the spirit. And it's just not the case. It wasn't
No.
the case at all. I was really
No.
surprised. It was
Yes.
just a lot of people studying different, spiritual books, different areas of spirituality. And there really
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that kind of brother sisterhood going on there. And I expected that to be there. It was not there. You would expect that in seminary. Not that way.
Oh my goodness. I
Not that
would have
way.
thought there would be.
Yeah, you would have thought, but
You didn't find it there.
I didn't feel it there at all. It was just academia.
It was just academia. We're just studying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
maybe they weren't really in touch that much with their soul and their walk or their way they were, but there was just academia or
I didn't feel,
warm and fuzzy.
yeah, I didn't
No.
feel it coming from their
Yeah.
heart. It's like their hearts weren't open.
Ah,
It was
right.
like, yeah, they were into a lot of the different theology and
Yes.
the different religions and studies that there are out there, but I didn't feel that sense of community, that sense of
Mm-hmm.
heart sharing, heart
Mm-hmm.
space going on, and you would expect that to be there. It was kind of very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you ever go to seminary, keep that in mind because you're
Yeah,
not going to
keep it
find
in
it there.
mind that people are keeping their hearts to themselves.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they were doing there. Most people were just concerned about going through their studies and
Yeah.
passing their courses and doing all the paperwork.
And getting their diploma or whatever it is.
I,
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting. Yes.
And so now I feel called more towards helping others on the spiritual path, just because I've went through so much pain and suffering myself that I feel called just to give talks and lectures about some of
Yes.
the problems and things that can happen and the way our minds work, the thoughts that go through our heads, and how we can get stuck with them and identify with them, and which causes so much pain and anxiety, and
Yeah.
just hoping to spread awareness in the world through my books and talks and lectures, becoming more open and understanding and aware of those things that are going on within you, and to be open and learn about them, and so that they don't rule your lives, because so much of that, so much of the thoughts and emotions and that go through, that we have been conditioned and learned and have taken on through hurts that have happened, and we carry with them. And we're not even aware of the programs that are playing, that have happened, the chips that we're carrying on our shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
and how that affects how we see reality, how that colors how we see
Mm-hmm.
everything. Our hurt, our pain is causing us to see reality, a really limited perspective. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And when you overcome that, those feelings that are they cripple you.
Yes. They cripple you.
Yeah. Then you meet and you greet people and life every day completely different.
Right.
And a lot of people want to know how to get there, And
Yes.
so I think that you're offering a beautiful service, especially your books. You've already done that, but through talk and giving lectures and things like that, even better, because people now that the pandemic is over, I mean, you could even do it on Zoom, right? But now
Sure.
that the pandemic is over, it's opened up again, that in-person sort of, you can talk to the speaker after the talk is done, right?
Right.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to talk about before I close up the show?
Just that practicing those words from the Dalai Lama.
Mm-hmm.
It's extending yourself and being kind to others,
Mm-hmm.
even in small ways
Mm-hmm.
that can help to change other people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And don't try to change the world.
No.
Change yourself instead. Peace begins with you. So peace has to start in you before you can start bringing peace into the world. So open your heart, become aware of who you are, what you identify with, and learn to be more kind and caring to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so if just leaving those words of practicing loving kindness in your own way, in your own heart, with your own family
Mm-hmm.
and people around you can really help to improve our society.
Yes.
And to change the world in a wonderful way. And so if I just leave with those words, I think that would be the most important.
Yes, beautifully. It's almost like a benediction or something that you've given us.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased that I have met you through my friend, Gail, and through your friend, Gail. I mean, it's a beautiful, almost, because you know Gail and I know Gail, why we just friends automatically because of Gail, right? By our connections. And that's wonderful. We're just so relaxed with each other. We've had a beautiful conversation.
Yes.
I adore your life. I adore your courage, your strength to follow your heart and soul instead of what everybody else was doing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Takes a lot of courage to do that.
It does.
Because you're losing, those friends fall away and new people come into your life. But when you change and those friends fall away, you don't realize that these beautiful people are going to come into your life and help you then on your journey, because your soul is waiting to point you in your direction. Right. And so I thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared. I mean, it prompted me and conversations that I've never had with people, especially not on a podcast. Oh my goodness, we've revealed maybe than we wanted to.
Right.
But thank you so much, Jill. It's been wonderful. And I'd really like to have you back on the show sometime to go a little bit deeper and talk more about dreams and the esoteric and all of that stuff. I it's my favorite subject.
Cool. Thank you so much, Rhonda. I appreciate it. I love being here and love sharing with you.
Thank you. Theme song for the Rhonda Grant Show is Sun on the Water, composed and performed by my friend John Park Wheeler. This is Rhonda Grant with the Rhonda Grant Show, author of Magical Forces Within, Extraordinary Discoveries in an Ordinary Life, inviting you to look for the magical forces within yourself today and every day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you would like to find out more information about Rhonda and her upcoming guests and the work that she does, go to her website, rhondagrantauthor.com. That's rhondagrantauthor.com.
Digital audio health by Psychotherapist